Step boy. Everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, it's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day.
Welcome to Tales from the Field. We are back and better than ever. My name is Bradley Ball, and it is so good to have you with us. Last week, we had our community roundtable. On Tuesday and on Wednesday, we released our MS Tech Bits, SQL Server for Beginners. How does the transaction log work? If you haven't checked out those videos, do it now. Well, maybe not right now. Maybe about 30, 40 minutes. Go check out those videos. You don't want to miss a thing. This is your first time finding your way over to Tales from the Field. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. If you want to interact with the show, it is so easy to interact with the show. We are streaming right now on Twitter under SQL Balls, Josh Ludeman, Neeraj Jafari, Tales from the Field. We are over at LinkedIn under SQL Balls, and we are also streaming on the Tales from the Field hub on YouTube, of course, our Tales from the Field channel. And if you make a comment on any of those streams, one of my amazing co-hosts will see that and they will add it to the show so we can interact with you. And we love to interact with you. And speaking of those amazing co-hosts, before I go any further, let me introduce them. I am joined by Andreas Padilla, Josh Ludeman, and standing up for truth, justice, and the American way. It's easy to confuse him for Superman, but it's not. It's your friend of mine, Neeraj Jafari. Andreas, over the last week, we dropped the SQL Server for Beginners. How does the transaction log work? You were on vacation last week. How was your vacation?
Well, first of all, there's nothing more American than transaction log work. Thank you for posting that. Go USA. Wow. Second of all, I had an all-American, spring break training, hot dogs, beers, some Cracker Jacks. You can't go wrong. That was like 4 days of relaxation.
I was going to say hot dog and beers, man. You might as well break out the fireworks and call it the 4th of July. That's fantastic.
So, Andres, I know you're in South Florida. Did you get to see the World Baseball Classic that was in Miami?
I did not see the World Baseball. I did catch St. Louis against the Cardinals up in Jupiter.
Okay.
What's the name of the stadium? Nice little, stadium. You can reach out and touch the players. It's the
when you said Cracker Jacks, I wasn't sure because I knew my wife and I have been glued to the TV last week. We were watching the World Baseball Classic. It was great games last couple of weeks even. So I wasn't sure, but yeah.
I love it, man. I'm gonna you spoke tickled my
one more vacation
right there. I'm gonna go check it out the YouTube.
You know, I got to tell you, I had not even considered this. So this is something we need to do next year, right? Because Florida is the home to so many teams for spring training. We got the Tigers over in Lakeland. We got the Yankees over in Tampa. We've got a team in Juniper. Hi, Cecil. How you doing, my friend? Cecil Phillips over there. Josh's hat. I love it. So Josh, which one are you wearing today?
Today, I'm actually wearing the Haunted Mansion hat.
Oh, very nice. It's been a while since I've been to Disney. I need to go over there and see if I can find you a new hat.
I need to go over to the hat store at Disney Springs. There were a couple good options in there and dig through them, see what we come up with. But yeah, I felt like I'd been wearing the white one a lot lately, so I changed it up to, Haunted Mansion.
Nice. Daniel Taylor, hey Dan, 4 days of beers, hot dogs, Cracker Jacks, or Cracker Jills. Way to keep the diet, Andre. I got to tell you one thing. I'm jealous. Andreas just eats food, and it's like, oh, I'll go to this hab, and then I'll go to this hab. They've got 8 of them for him to pick, and it's just the man. He looks amazing. Meanwhile, I have ab.
The ab.
I have keg.
Yeah, just one.
You have ab. I have keg.
Hey, Neeraj is probably sporting a 12-pack underneath there. We shouldn't even ask. It's
Neeraj. He's sporting an 18.
Oh, that's a good pat.
He's an Adonis.
I don't even know how the physics of that work, but I'm sure it's true. You know what? Never mind. That's a great transition right there. You know what we should talk about? The physics being true. We should talk about the community roundtable. Why all the folks have tuned in for today. So Neeraj, I have you up first. Let's see. I have multi-column distribution for dedicated pools is now GA. I mean, we talk about, Josh, we got to work on our sound effects. We need a celebration or a firework or something.
Fireworks, yeah.
That one right there.
So if we do one firework for this, we're going to have to do it every time Neeraj goes over one of his links because, I mean, they're impactful. Every single one deserves an explosion and pyrotechnics every time.
Anyway, so I mean, this was one of the biggest tasks, I think, from the customer side of it, multi-column distribution for dedicated SQL in Synapse. I mean, I had a couple of customers waiting for it, and they were pretty happy when it went to GA. I think it went probably last release or something like that. I mean, the best part is in this article, Maria is going over what is first multi-column distribution, right? I mean, she's showing an example what that really means. Really nicely done. I mean, very nicely done in there. So thanks, Brad.
Yeah.
That's and then she's like how you can create multi-column distributed objects. She's giving an example, views, tables, whatever you want to do it with really good examples in there. Nicely written down article, and that is something everybody was waiting for, I think.
No, absolutely. This is a great link. Thank you, Maria, so much for posting this blog for the community. And it's such a huge ask, right? Because one of the things, who has the ABBA? I don't know, Dan, who has the ABBA?
Who has ABBA?
Nobody.
I mean, are we talking about we have to be talking about the band, so I don't know. Maybe
ABBA.
I forgot where we were covering music. I don't know.
Okay. This is a huge win for performance there we go. Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, so that was something I was about to say. So why this is so huge, why this is so important is if you had a distributed table, you only had one distributed column that you could utilize. You then needed to try and find that key or have that key shared on other tables. So if you had to distribute, you distributed on the same key to be able to keep them hash aligned. So that way you weren't doing a lot of unnecessary operations on your individual nodes that cause data movement. I mean, so part of what this does is this gives you the capability to now hash on multiple columns, which is also a feature that was offered in other big MPP systems. And so folks migrating over to Azure Synapse dedicated pools have been looking for this. And this is really key to be able to optimize that query performance and be able to add that in there. Absolutely fantastic stuff. If you're using Synapse and dedicated pools, you're going to want to go check this out right away.
I think the mystery of Dan Taylor has been solved about who has the ABBA. Dan jumps in, abs equals ABBA. So he went dad joke extreme on us, and I think that's who we have.
I gotcha. Yeah. No text content. Yeah, I think we missed that. But I think if you put all of us next to one another, maybe our abs spell something. Andreas has 8, Neeraj has 12, me have 1. It's almost an SOS signal. I don't know. I was
going to say, Brad, if they put the two of us at the end the way we were talking, whatever the word is, it's going to end in ooh. Sorry.
That's you're not wrong. We should think about that. We could spell moo, zoo, boo. We could use that. It's got a lot of different purposes.
We have completely derailed this community roundtable. I love it.
We have so Dan's bringing it back. Multi-column distribution ranks up there with replicated tables. Yes, it's something that is going to be really key. As a matter of fact, you're not going to want to distribute on just one key anymore. This is going to be the de facto thing you're going to want to do.
To be fair, I didn't want to before.
That is fair. That is fair. So I'm up next. I've got Alpa Budita, and I actually got to see Alpa present over at SQL Bitch. She is wonderful, and she did a great job. And so on this, she's talking about how to use annotation in Azure Data Factory or Azure Synapse Analytics data integration pipelines. And one of the things I love, she's got a GitHub repo for this. She's got a YouTube video, so you don't have to just read this. You can go see it as well. But these annotations will be able to give us more depth into what is successfully working and what may be airing out within our pipelines. And she gives a beautiful demonstration of this, of an error beforehand and then an error once she adds in the dynamic parameter value that's being passed for the pipeline. So you can see that some succeeded and some failed. Absolutely fantastic stuff that we now have within Data Factory. This is really going to help people when they're troubleshooting pipelines. Thank you, Alpa, so much. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. All right. So next up, I have Andreas. And Andreas, you have how to set up a Python virtual environment on Windows.
Oh, I love this post by Avanov. Um, you need a virtual environment unless you want to live in dependency hell. Who wants that? Not me. Avanov shows us in this post how to easily install your Python base layer, then go into Visual Studio, install a virtual environment. Then inside that little box, that little virtual environment, then I start installing all my necessary packages, my libraries. And why do I want that? Why do I want that type of isolation? Because I may have a project that uses different versions, different NumPy, maybe I'm using the Azure ML SDK version 1 for one project and Azure ML SDK version 2 in another project. I don't want them to collide. Makes my life easier, makes deleting these environments, creating and deleting these environments super easy. It's a no-brainer. You'll be up and running in 5 minutes. 5-minute read, you'll be up and running in 5 minutes. So great post.
Yeah, and the nice thing about in Python environments too is if you get deeper into Python and start building things that are going to run in a container, if you have one environment that you do all your work in, that container just swells up and becomes huge. And then really you're not running efficiently anymore too. The whole idea of environments is it makes your life so much better.
Makes sense.
Beautifully done. Well said, Josh. Yes, exactly.
Excellent. Speaking of Josh, I have him up next.
Who?
I have announcing the release of Azure Data Studio 1.4 with Aaron Stellato.
Yeah, our friend Aaron Stellato has been on the show before. She's one of the PMs on the tools team and just has a great post going through here about some of the new features launched in 1.4.2. I really just shared this one because I was excited to see 1.42 land when earlier last week, actually, when it did land. I reshared it on Twitter, retweeted it in excitement. A lot of, especially like the view objects and schema here and the changes in the Object Explorer and grouping things together, some stuff around new management. They've added some of the things that, and I use this in a loving way, but a lot of our SSMS, lovers and friends who, would stand in a corner and say, you'll have to pry my management studio from my cold dead hands. I think a lot of the updates that are coming out here along, like the new user interface, this new deployment option, things like that are there to help, kind of, I would say, slow down the learning curve between moving from SSMS, where there was a lot of things in Management Studio to help you on a daily basis. There's a lot of good things they've added in here to really lessen that learning curve, make it less steep.
Well, and my previous person that I was talking about, Alpa, I saw her at SQL Bits. Erin was at SQL Bits. She was a big part of that keynote with Bob Ward. Wonderful, wonderful job. And I remember, she was super excited about this. And I'll be honest, I'm not you're going to pry SSMS out of my cold hand. But there are specific things where the functionality is not there in Azure Data Studio. And I have to go do some of those things in SSMS. And so I love seeing some of these capabilities come over. So that way it truly begins to give you as a user some of the independence. I would love to be in Azure Data Studio more. But it's just some of those functionalities that I need in SSMS make it to where I have to go back and forth.
Oh no, and I agree. And with a lot of this stuff coming in, you're seeing the slow trickle where, hopefully more of that stuff gets filled in. But also some of the functionality too. I'd love to see the community come up more too in the development of extensions, because Azure Data Studio extensions can be another thing you can use to help bridge that gap as well. So definitely, Neeraj, I saw you were starting to talk.
So I was wondering, could we say that Azure Data Explorer is the web version of SSMS?
I'd say web version. I would say lighter version, and just because in what it can do, it's missing, like to Brad's point, it's missing some of the functionality, but as well, it runs a lot lighter. Like, when you spin up Management Studio, it's going to take a minute, right?
Yes.
But when you spin up Data Explorer, it's like, there you go. So I would say it's a lighter version.
Data Explorer runs in I'm sorry, Azure Data Studio, not Data Explorer. Sorry.
Data Studio,
Yeah,
yes.
Data Explorer is something completely different. Sorry, my bad. Azure Data Studio is something that is based off of that Visual Studio code base as well, Visual Studio Code. So it's one of those things where the community can very easily get in there, and people build extensions all the time. Third-party providers build extensions all the time to be able to put the functionality that people like and just natively integrate that into there. So the specific functionality that you need, like when we're doing a lot of stuff with Arc, I need Arc to be in my Azure Data Studio. But if I never worked with Azure Arc SQL, then maybe I don't need the Arc extensions as part of that. So it allows me to specifically add those things to be able to add it. Whereas with SSMS, everything is built in. And it's third-party providers can install different tools and clip-ins to SSMS, but it's not quite as easy as it is with Azure Data Studio. So,
and with Azure Data Studio, you're multi-OS, right?
Yes,
Management Studio is you're on Windows or bust, like the old bumper stickers. Azure Data Studio, if you're running in, a multi-OS environment where you're supporting, Linux-based, services, or you're running on a Mac because you're in multiple places, Azure Data Studio will run Windows, Linux, Mac. And for me, I'm, kind of a multi-personality in that respect. I love, being in all of the OSs. I love the advantages of all of them. That if I'm running on, my Ubuntu machine, I can spin up Azure Data Studio. If I'm running on a MacBook, I can spin up Azure Data Studio, or on my Windows machine, Azure Data Studio. So I love it from that standpoint that no matter where I'm going, my life doesn't change that much if I'm in VS Code in Azure Data Studio.
I remember being at SQL Saturday Jacksonville, and there was someone from the SQL product group. This is, long before I was with Microsoft, and they were presenting there, and they came in and they were presenting with a Mac. And I think maybe 2016 or 2014, something was on the horizon, and they were presenting on a Mac, and everybody went, "Wait a second, are you running SQL and SSMS on a Mac?" And there was a murmur in the audience. And then they went, no, I'm just messing with y'all. It's not on Mac. I'm running a Windows VM on my Mac, emulating to be able to get it to work. And we went, oh, okay. And so it's easy for me as a Windows person to think Windows. But there is a big segment of our population out there that is not just, Windows beholden. And them being able to have these cross compatibility tools is a huge thing that we've pushed forward. So. Yeah, really
I had a MacBook
stuff.
Years ago that I had to buy huge just so I could run the Windows VM and stuff like that to be able to use the tooling. And then by the time I moved off of that, using that full time, we had VS Code, Azure Data Studio was launching, and things like that where you could live in both lands.
Yeah.
Dan brings up a good point too, of course, and that is the support of Postgres in Azure Data Studio. Versus Management Studio, which is, again, SQL Server. That's it.
This segment of the program has been brought to you by Azure Data Studio. If you're not using it, go give it a try.
So meanwhile, yeah, exactly. Meanwhile, Aaron, if you're listening, or the rest of the PG, we would love some stickers and sponsorship if you're interested. Thank you.
I don't stickers. I
doubt it. But hey, how many months did I try to get the Universal Studios to sponsor us, on behalf of that resort? And by the way,
you're going to start again
later this year. And I'm
So I'm just gonna finally have to change the subject. Neeraj, you're up next. You have working with GPT-4 and ChatGPT models on Azure.
So by the time I was just getting ready for GPT-3, now GPT-4 is out. So I was like, okay, what's new in GPT-4 and what difference make it? So this is a good article by Derek. He goes over the different models of it. He describes what's the difference between what is a GPT-4 and all the stuff in a very nicely way. The chat completions, he's going over it, the model versioning and all the stuff, very nicely written down in there. And it also shows you examples how to do it, how to set it up on Azure AI Studio, and some samples that you can play around with. Tons of samples out there, but something really nice written down up here.
Absolutely. That's a great overview. I really like that. As a matter of fact, I like that so much. I had to double check that you and I were doing different articles because I am up next.
Oh,
And I have what is visual chat GPT. And I love this. This is by Andy Sansom. And Andy wrote specifically about the next journey and how visual chat GPT is a visual model for us to be able to utilize. He talks about how people are probably familiar with our DALL-E models, how this can be used. And as we always like to do when we talk about OpenAI and we talk about ChatGPT and we talk about this space, we need to talk about responsibility. And so he had reservations and concerns around this as well and posted some of these. So I thought this was a very interesting, well-balanced article. But this is going to be one of those subjects that we're all going to need to be aware of. We're talking about more and more in the world at large, especially if you're in the IT field, you're going to, I don't feel like impact is the right word, right? I feel like people go, you're going to be impacted by this, but this has the capability to influence your work, to change some of how it's going to do. You're going to end up working with this in ways that if we go back earlier, you didn't. This is going to be very similar to like an iPhone where, pre-iPhone, we have plenty of things that hey, Andreas, I think we've got some audio issues on your side. I just muted you. Let's see.
I think I'm back.
There we go. Okay. Whew. That was a little nerve-wracking. It's a little bit staticky, but I've got you up next. So let me cut to you before we lose you. Let me lose me, right? Here we go. Azure Databricks monitoring with log analytics by Dustin Bayoni.
Oh yeah, great post by him. Actually, this has been a question that I've been getting very quite often now from a bunch of customers. They're like, "Hey, what do I need to do to monitor my Databricks clusters?" And you can use Ganglia, you can use some out of the box features, but if you want to house them under the one umbrella, like our famous saying says, one ring to rule them all, one ring to bind them. All right, what's the other saying? One ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. Come on, Lord of the Rings. Any Lord of the Rings? No.
I was going to say that was solid, buddy. No, that was a great.
Yeah.
That was.
Yeah, I don't remember that one. I feel terrible about myself now.
You didn't know that? That's basically what's written on the inside of the ring in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I was just mesmerized by your soliloquy, so that's why you got silence. I was like, warm. Bravo.
So Dustin, what he shows us here is how to make sure that everything from your Spark cluster, all those logs, get nicely pumped into log analytics. You got to do a little bit of massaging. You actually have to build a Maven jar file, install it on your Spark cluster, install that library. When you build that Maven file or the jar file, you have to have a reference to your log analytics workspace. But once you do that, you can pump in a lot of valuable information. And what information do I want to know? I want to know what queries, what items are causing heavy shuffling on the clusters. Why? Because heavy shuffling causes things to slow down. And that's one of the lowest hanging fruits that we want to keep our finger on while we monitor our Spark clusters. Thank you, Dustin, for this post.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Nice. Great stuff. So next up, Mr. Lord of the Rings himself, who apparently we need to sit down and have a marathon. I haven't watched the new series. I'll be honest, haven't watched the new series at all. So I have no idea if it's good or not. Is Mr. Josh the Hat Ludeman. Josh, you've got turn your database into an API in minutes with Data API Builder for Azure databases. I am excited about this one. Take it away, my friend.
Yeah, so this one actually is referencing an open source project that we have where you can actually generate APIs for pulling data based off of queries. So it's not exactly the opposite, which is some functionality in preview in Azure SQL database where you can actually make API calls out of the database. This is generating an API for interacting with a database. And it works not just with Azure SQL, it also has connectors where you can generate it based off of queries to Cosmos DB and things like that. But I just came across this honestly looking at some posts, a journal over the weekend, and was like, wow, Azure SQL, Cosmos, Postgres, MySQL,
Yeah.
and being able to link a database to that and create the APIs based off of queries themselves. I got this because I read through the article and was like, wow, I need to go to this GitHub and dig more into that this week. And that's actually on my list of reading materials this week.
Nice.
Very nice. Cool
Yeah.
stuff. I like that quite a bit. Let's see. And so next up is, of course, the one and only Neeraj Jafari. Neeraj, you've got a blog by Angela Tidwell.
Yep. I mean, we've been talking SQL Saturdays. I've never gone to a SQL Saturday, so I was just wondering what is the importance of SQL Saturday, and she's really written it down very nicely, right? I mean, it's a free seminar. I mean, people do volunteer up there. Everybody, like Brad has been the max, I think, out of all of us, been to SQL Saturdays. So really nicely written down all the free times or the volunteering times that they put to get this show successful. Then how sponsorship is a key in there. I mean, she goes over how sponsoring it helps them out, what they do, why they do it, what it brings the value of it, right? It gives you friends, you get you mentors, all of that stuff, and really nicely written down in this. So, Brad, something for you. You've been the mentor of SQL Saturdays for us, so something for you, which inspires us.
Thanks, buddy. Well, and I appreciate it, because one of the things I love is this paragraph right here, why we do what we do. And Angela talks about a chance meeting with a former U.S. Marine Corps veteran, and there are a lot of veterans involved in the SQL community. We all know some. We've had them on the show, and there's many more out there that that you're going to meet as you get involved with SQL Saturdays. Just a ton of wonderful people out there. And he talked about how he was referred to this by a college professor, but after going and being there, he met another ex-Marine, and Jim Idaho. Jim is very active in the community. He's a wonderful person, and he left with connections and network, and also just a capability. When I went to my first SQL Saturday ever, and I love what's in here, it felt like coming home. It's hard to describe other than that. It was the first event I'd ever been at where everybody was facing the same problems I had. And it's not just a DBA event, it's a data professional, right? Like there are consultants there, there are MVPs there, there is a wide swath of people, but they all deal with data. And chances are there is a group working on a problem that you're working on right now. Mm-hmm. And I sat there and I immediately connected with people based off the things we were working on. I had conversations with folks, and it felt absolutely amazing. So it was just such a great resource to be able to have. It's a fantastic thing. And everybody's looking for a community, right? When we go, part of the reason I always like to pump up SQL Bits a bit is because they do the last day of their conference on Saturday is a free day. Mm-hmm. Past Summit could do that. Past Summit, heck, owned the SQL Saturday brand for the longest time, bought it from Andy Warren. They could have had a Saturday event where they went, hey, we're going to rent the Washington State Convention Center for one more day, and we're going to let people come in, and we'll have sponsors to help pay for that day. And we're going to run this as a SQL Saturday. Anybody in the Washington area can come along.
That would have been awesome. The world's largest SQL Saturday.
Absolutely. It would have been amazing to do. Granted, Live 360 could do it. Dev Intersections, the Azure Data Conference, they could look at doing something like that. SQL Bits is the only conference that does it, and they've done it since their inception for, over 20 years now. And it is a fantastic thing that they do. When we worked on SQL Saturday Orlando, we would go and give a session specifically to college students, and we would talk to them about what it's like to be in the IT field. And they would get credit from their professors as like an extra credit grade if they went and they attended the seminar we did a one just for students, and after it was over they could go participate in the event. But it's so much about networking, and it's so much about giving just freely. It's a nobody's making money off of a SQL Saturday, right? Even the user group has to have sponsors, and any money they raise at that event helps fund the user group for the rest of the year. And it's just a wonderful, act of giving everybody gets to participate in. I'm very excited for us to go up to Jacksonville, because it's a really great one. It was number 2 on the list. First one was in Tampa. First one was in Orlando. Second one, I think, was in Tampa. And I think the third one was in Jacksonville. for SQL Saturday ever. So, and for a little while, it was just those 3 events. But thank you, Neeraj. I love that. I absolutely love being able to talk about the community there as well. So for my last entry, I'm going to go with Hamish. Hamish Watson, the hybrid DBA, and he's got a series on KQL he's been doing. As a matter of fact, I've got some KQL items I'm going to be working on for us. And this is ingesting data with Azure Data Factory. And there's multiple different ways that you can do this. And he runs through the steps at a very high level, but it's a very important thing for people to understand. If you're playing around with Data Explorer, if you have large sets of data that are sitting on the outside of Data Explorer, you want them to be consumed and utilized within your cluster. One of the things that you can do is you can use Azure Data Factory to be able to load that up. Simple, easy, quick read, but a really great and important thing to be able to understand about the service.
Definitely. Love that one. Love
All
Hamish.
right. Yeah, love Hamish too. Absolutely. Andreas, I have you next. You have eliminate these 11 phrases that make people question your credibility, says a public speaking expert.
This is fun. Which ones do I say? That's why I say it's fun.
Oh, and Andreas is on mute.
Andreas on mute.
Oh,
And it wasn't me. Yes.
first word of the show.
Uh,
There you go.
We need this post, especially since we're going into conference season. You know, you got to bring your A game. You can't be umming. You can't sort of, just, likes, I think. I'm not an expert. We need to refine our tradecraft here. Thank you, Christina Helena, for posting this and reminding me that I need to work on my ums. And what other one? I tend to do ums. I'm no expert, but yeah, I'll put that one in there. Here and there.
I think ums is a common one for everybody.
Yeah.
To be fair, I always say I'm no expert, but I stayed in a Holiday Express 2 weeks ago. So, I mean, did that diminish value? I mean,
I think some of these are fair, but I don't think all of these actually speak to the technology field, because some of what we do is we have to say it depends quite a bit, because there are conditions. But when we say it depends, we then need to quantify what it depends of. And I will say, in my opinion, because we have to be careful sometimes with the legal aspect of what we're telling people to do, we can't say, I 100% tell you never to do this. As a matter of fact, every bad thing that I've seen in SQL that I would tell people by default, don't do this, I have seen at least one logical reason to be able to utilize, including auto close, which I couldn't believe it. I've only found one example for that ever, but I actually found one. Haven't found a really good one for auto shrink yet. And if I ever do, I'll probably need to let Paul Randall know, and he'll probably still tell me it's bad. Did that make sense? I do ask that when we get questions. I could see where a better phrase would be. I hope that made sense. So maybe I'll change that slightly. But I wonder if some of these are for TED Talks, but not technical talks.
I mean, that makes sense. I don't say
a lot of good ones.
Yeah, because like did that make sense? I would use that a lot, but that's because I feed off of speaking to the room, and less so in these settings without human interaction. So I always ask, did that make sense? Specifically because I want to elicit a reaction from them and some engagement in there. So, but yeah. I mean, I get how, again, to Brad's point, TED Talks and things like that, you don't want to necessarily, you're speaking to them. You don't necessarily want to elicit that reaction back.
Well, like number 10, whenever I'm presenting with Josh, I have to say, I'm sorry, but he's wrong.
Well, so Brad, to be fair, I was waiting to do something actually when we were talking about this, because you brought up it depends. And I think we're going to add a new banner to the show, and I'm going to look for sound effects, because when someone drops it, we should have this one here that I'm working on just come across the bottom. We should have this banner pop up, alert the consultant answer, because that's exactly what it was. We used to do that in our sessions regularly. When you have to say it depends, it's the classic consultant answer, because the joke was you say that because consultants want to make more money.
Well, yeah, that could be part of it. You know what's funny? We should literally create a soft skills presentation where we go through this entire list and we use all of them.
Yeah.
I love it.
I think
New
I
session
think
idea.
I think that might be a little bit of fun. In all honesty,
Come to our soft skills session where we teach you how to use all the phrases you shouldn't
all the
use.
phrases. You should.
How to wiggle your way out of a bad situation.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
yeah, that's some good stuff. All right, so last but certainly not least, it's my good
Not
friend.
even close.
No matter how much I like to give him a good hard time, Josh is one of those people I love to present with. He is an expert, and experts are dangerous. So that makes that a little bit fun.
It doesn't matter.
Okay, I'm not an expert, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express a couple years ago. So there we go.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. It was fantastic meeting you at SQL Bits as well. Having been to my soft skills talk, I take that advice instead. That's funny. I appreciate that. So let me toss it over to my good friend Josh Ludeman. And hey, look at that good looking son of a gun on screen. Woo.
No, this was great. So actually, I get updates on what goes out on the Azure podcast, and I was shocked because I did not know anything about this. But there was a great episode, episode 455, where our friend Andres here and Mir Alam from our team in the Fast Track actually went over using Azure ML in the real world. And they talked through all kinds of different examples of how to use machine learning, Azure machine learning in the real world. But I just saw this and I was like, whoa, this needs to get featured front and center. So I wanted to make sure and land this one, of course, at the end for you, Andres. Great show on here. Talked about your drone project as well, and just some awesome concepts that you all talked through.
Let me know when you get the Venmo money that I sent you. And thanks for the plug.
Yeah, I checked earlier and it didn't come in. I was going to talk to you about that after show, but yeah, if you want to, yeah.
Hey, nice job, Andres. I like it, buddy. I like
appreciate it, buddy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We feature
All
good
right.
content. What can I say?
Yeah.
Well, I think, Josh, it's time for the wrap up.
Oh, sorry. Wrong thing I thought you were looking for. My bad.
Maybe you should have told me it depends.
Oh, you said it.
So,
oh, that's the problem.
I was going to say the first thing I want to do is I want to say it's time. It is time to start planning your trip to Live 360.
Ooh.
Now we don't have news yet. We have not found out if we're speaking yet. We have applied. The call for speakers is closed. There's a lot of great speakers who have submitted to this, and so we've got our fingers crossed, and we're hoping that they're going to punch our ticket. But if you are in that in wherever you are, forget it. I was going to say if you're in the Orlando area, you want to come to the Orlando area. This is going to be the week before Thanksgiving. I mean, the parks will be kind of empty. It's cold everywhere else in the world. And Josh, where is it?
It's on the luscious, beautiful grounds of Universal Studios Lowe's Royal Pacific Resort.
I was going to say my favorite conference in the United States of America, hands down, every single year. This is going to be a good time. They have great networking events. They've got a dessert luau. If you are a attendee, your room key is a 2-park fast pass. So you want to make sure and knock off early because you are on the grounds. From the resort hotel, you can hear the Hulk roller coaster just taking off every couple minutes.
It'll freak you out the first time standing there in the parking lot talking to somebody, and then you hear. But yeah,
there's
that is cool.
I was going to say there's a great nightlife. It's a lot of fun to go out there and have fun with your friends, but also it is a wonderful family-friendly event. I all of the time see people there with their partners and their spouses and their kids. The dessert luau is very kid friendly. They've got all kinds of different cakes that they do. They've got a lab on Sunday. They've got a pre-con on Monday. Monday night, they have a dine around where you get to meet the speakers. And then the week begins in earnest, and they close out with a post-conference session on Friday. It is a wonderful, wonderful week. And for those of us who are speakers, we typically get put up at the Cabana Bay. And I'm looking at my two friends here who have young kids. There's a beautiful lazy river. Even if it's cold, they got little fires where you can buy a s'more kit outside, go outside and make some s'mores with the kiddos. After taking them to the dessert luau, getting them jacked up on sugar, come back and watch a movie poolside. It's Universal, so they got a lot of great movies that they'll play for us. But it is that time. Put it on your calendar. The week before Thanksgiving, that is Live 360 week, and our hope is we're going to be there this week.
Go ahead. If we had a budget for royalties, you keep saying it's time, and all I keep thinking of is Bruce Buffer at UFC events going, "It's time,
ladies and gentlemen."
Yeah, we need a royalty.
Rumble. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. We're going to have to figure this out. Okay. But before Live 360, we've got Sequel Saturday Jacksonville coming up in May. All of the Tales from the Field folk, we're going to be there. Yeah, maybe I could say that right one of these times. Dyslexia tends to no. So Josh has submitted. I've submitted. Andreas, Neeraj, Dan Taylor, me and Neeraj and Dan Taylor. We've got a pre-con. We're going to be doing DBA Fundamental 101. But you don't just have to go to our pre-con. Our good friend Jinder Grant has a Synapse pre-con there. Bob Ward has the Sequel 2022 pre-con that he did over at Sequel Bits. He's going to be doing that at Sequel Saturday Jacksonville. It's going to be an absolutely amazing event. You're going to want to make sure that you go and you attend. Dan has submitted to Sequel Saturday South Florida as well. It has been announced, and I know some of the other folks are looking at that. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to make it to that one or not, but I know that is some that the rest of us are looking at. Keep that in mind. This week, I am going to be dropping our video, and our video is going to be how to translate Sequel to KQL. And it's going to be like that. Literally, I've got a magic command I used at Sequel Bits. I'm going to bring that demo straight here and show folks how we can turn KQL Sequel immediately into KQL.
Magic show.
Absolutely.
Magic Man. There we go. Right. That's Brad's new nickname, the Magic Man.
I'll take it.
Magic Man.
Shake and bake, baby. Shake and bake.
Shake and bake. Maybe I could be the balls. Magic Man, and then sometime I can win.
Magic,
maybe.
Magic.
All right.
How do I win?
Magic Brad. Magic Brad.
I should have never proposed that. My bad.
No.
My bad.
I almost fell into the trap. I almost fell in.
All right. So, guys, am I forgetting anything? Does that make Josh El Diablo?
Yeah.
You know what movie I want to watch this weekend? There we go. A little shake, little bake.
I can safely say I've never watched that one, so I don't even get the El Diablo reference. So there you
go. Oh,
man!
Well, now we got a plan. Yeah.
That's
we are not group watching that together. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, group watch party. That's what it was built for. We can. Yeah, I think that definitely is something that should happen. Pop the popcorn. It's happening. All right. Take care of one another out there. Have a great week, folks. We'll see you next week.
Hey, everybody.